Yeah, it's that time. It's the time to scope out the self-titled album from Suicide Silence. This is a disc that already has plenty of a reputation that's behind it without it even being released. In fact, it was just released today. The reputation was generated based off of the singles that preceded Doris and Silence. It was seen as a real backlash, a real sort of three steps backwards from what this band once was, and also a new idea that just seemed to be crashing and burning, with Doris gaining a lot of negative reactions from metal fans. But now the whole entire album's out. We can finally discover whether or not this was a one-off experiment, or if this is something that was going to populate the entirety of this self-titled release from the longtime deathcore veterans. And the answer to that question is, it's not a one-off. This is definitely something that populates all of this 9-track affair, from Doris, which starts it off, to Don't Be Careful, You Might Get Hurt, which finish it. Now, luckily enough, you might say, it's only 9 tracks in length, but it is 44 minutes. Some of these songs do eclipse the 5-minute mark, and in fact, one of them, Conformity, is even pushing the 6-minute mark, and that can get a little tedious. So, what about this experiment makes it unique? What about it really is what was nailing down this whole entire idea? And it's the fact that they're sort of using this new metal slash deathcore combination in order to try to really fixate a little bit on creating some dark, some very off-kilter, some, kind of unique sounds, things that don't feel like they are very natural. Instead, they seem to try to build toward things being a little bit, I guess, insane, either that or a little bit, just a little off. And it's something that does work at some points in some levels. The problem is that throughout this album, it sounds like Suicide Silence sacrificed their sound to become sort of like a garage band, to really take a step back. It's very much like a Lulu or a Saint Anger style philosophy. Remember whenever we said that Illud Dividium Insanus was death metal Saint Anger? It's very possible that Suicide Silence's self-titled album right here could be deathcore Saint Anger, in the fact that it is kind of an artsy album. It's off the beaten path. It's them completely sort of shedding away and chipping away at what they formerly were, and trying something that is so alarmingly off the path that you almost have to respect them for the attempt. They sound a little bit like the Deftones, and Korn had a little bit of a baby. Yes, that's been spoken already, both in the review for Doris and by memers everywhere. But this is an album that starts off with perhaps a couple of its more weaker moments with Doris and Silence. Once you actually start to get within this concept a little bit, it's not too bad. The problem with it is that it tires very quickly. Having a full record of this, whenever you're not previously known for that, does come with some drawbacks. For one, it's not your core sound, so it's not something that really comes very naturally to you. So at times, Eddie feels like he's very sort of lost whenever he's doing some of these vocals. Granted, his cleans are not all completely terrible. It is something that actually builds a little bit to the mood and the overall themology of the album. It does have its, moments of subliminal glory. It's just not something that feels like a complete package. It doesn't feel like everything really fits. And that's really the point of it. If that's what they were aiming for, well, then mission fucking accomplished. But from the ears of a listener, it's a little jarring. It's a little off the beaten path. It definitely takes a lot of listens in order to really appreciate this at all. And the problem that I see is that a lot of people are not going to really dive that kind of time sink into an album such as this, where they already had an expectation of what they were hoping Suicide Silence would do here, and that was almost immediately dismissed from the get-go. Now remember, bands are doing things like this because they want to, especially in heavy metal. This isn't a chase the dollar signs moment. This isn't a sellout moment. Anybody saying those things are absolutely absurd. This is definitely nothing of that variety. This is something that they wanted to do. And based off of that, they certainly committed to the idea, and that by itself is admirable. Tracks such as Dying in a Red Room is actually fairly decent. This is one that has a pretty good flow to it. I like the fact that even though they do sound like they're sort of ripping off the Deftones, this one's handled pretty well. And in conformity for the most part, the near 6-minute 8th track does have a nice break from the overall scope of what you've heard for the previous 7 songs on the album, opting to slow things down a little bit, almost sound like they're aiming for a single and then slowly stripping away that idea. It's one thing that sort of feels like the album is a bit self-aware, almost like this was written after Doris was starting to get its negative review and placed on the album sort of as a little bit of a fuck you to all the people, myself probably included, who gave Doris a hard time. Probably not the actual case, but sometimes those things, those weird little things, they feel that way. Either that or you're clairvoyant prior to your album being released. So what to say about this disc? Well, I think that the best way to sum this up is what I said earlier. This is going to be an album that is going to require a number of listens in order for the appreciation factor to actually spawn itself and reveal itself to people, and they're not going to give it that amount of time. And based off of that, they're going to miss out on an album that certainly tries its best, but fails on many different levels. For one, this was an experiment that certainly had its real, good intentions, but the overall result that you get, the overall execution is just kind of poor. It feels a bit listless. It feels like a band that is trying something for the first time. They don't have everything down just quite yet. Suicide Silence, sadly, is not a band that can jump right on board to a secondary or a tertiary style and immediately find success. It's one of those things where you almost have to stick with what you're good at and what you're known for and just slyly toss in some of these other nuances instead of going full tilt boogie. That's what got Saint Anger in the trouble, that's what got Lulu in the trouble, that's what got Olivinium and Sanus in the trouble, and that's what's going to get this album into trouble. This is essentially Deathcore Saint Anger, but it's one that's handled a little bit differently. Principally because it's not infuriating so much as it is just confusing. It's an album that has a lot of potential if it just would have been executed a little bit better and perhaps balanced a little bit more by what Suicide Silence has been known for throughout their career. There's some traces, but just not nearly enough. And what you do get, while not terrible, it's not great either. This is an 11 out of 30. This is one where you should really tread and check this out at your own risk. I'm considering it a little bit more, on the low end of average because it wasn't an experience that I completely hated. This was actually a listen that I was able to get through with minimal complaint or problem. It's just that it just isn't good. There's not a lot that's very strong here. So, I want to know what you guys think about this album. What did you think about the self-titled disc from Suicide Silence? Let me know in the comments below. I'm CoverKillerNation. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.